to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today's subject, we're going to be going over the second part to Ner'zhul and his lore and how it all ties in with the Lich King, Arthas, etc. So let's get straight into it. So from last week, we know Ner'zhul was being deceived by Kil'jaeden. The Horde had been formed to take out the Draenei, Gul'dan betraying his mentor to become Kil'jaeden's right-hand man, and Ner'zhul was left behind during the war on Azeroth as the Horde were pushed back through the Dark Portal, leaving them stuck on their corrupted planet of Draenor. So this is where Ner'zhul's story picks up. So we start at the end of the war. Khadgar had managed to shut down the portal that connected Draenor to Azeroth, but he could not fully sever the connection between the two worlds. The Death Knight Terran, who had worked with Gul'dan, could feel that there was a connection to the world of Azeroth still, and the plan he put forward to Ner'zhul was to re-empower the Rift, unite the Horde, and go back. But this time not to conquer the world, as they couldn't. The alliance of Lordaeron were too strong, but instead to bring back 3 powerful artifacts and use them to open new portals and gateways to new planets. Surely no other worlds would put up as much as a fight as Azeroth's denizens did, they thought. But in order to even start thinking about doing this, they needed a leader. This is why Terran went to Ner'zhul, as even though Ner'zhul was deceived, the Orcs still did regard him as a high leader. When Terran turned up to the village where Ner'zhul had spent the 2 years not invited to Azeroth's first war, Ner'zhul wouldn't even listen. Ner'zhul was lost in his despair and only had thoughts about his own demise. Terran tried to convince him, explained his plan, and tried to give hope to this old shaman. Ner'zhul finally listened to Terran, and they began to construct a plan on how to go about doing this. The first stage was to open the old rift, and to do that they would need a powerful artifact. The artifact would be the Skull of Gul'dan. The Skull of Gul'dan was picked up by one of the warlocks that joined Gul'dan in the Tomb of Sargeras. The skull traded hands a few times until an orc named Hyrcan Skullsplinter. Hyrcan was the chieftain of the Bone Chewer clan, and Ner'zhul convinced all of the other orc clans about their plan, and he sent Grommash Hellscream, war chief of the Warsong clan, on the important mission to retrieve the Skull of Gul'dan. That mission would the mission that he was sent on would be to convince Hyrcan to give up the artifact, give up the Skull of Gul'dan, but Hyrcan was having none of it. This meant that Grommash had to fight for it. Grommash had to control the demon blood that was pumping through his veins, and he did that. He kept control of himself, and eventually he beat Hyrcan in a one-on-one fight. After defeating Hyrcan, Grommash convinced the new chieftain, Tagar Spinebreaker, to join him and Ner'zhul in the new Horde. With the reopening of the Dark Portal, their task was to collect 3 artifacts: the Book of Medivh, the Eye of Dalaran, and the Scepter of Sargeras. As multiple members of the Horde stepped through, Grommash, Terran, along with others, Ner'zhul stayed behind to keep the rift open and to communicate with them using the skull of his former apprentice. As the Horde set foot on the planet of Azeroth again, the Alliance rose up to fight the Horde and defend the planet. They didn't know right away what the Horde wanted, and this gave the Horde some time to collect their artifacts. The Horde also gained the help of the Black Dragon aspect, Deathwing, and they were given several of his Black Dragon eggs to take back to Draenor. Back on Draenor, Ner'zhul awaited Terrangor's return, but he did not return alone. The Black Dragon aspect, Deathwing himself, had returned with him, and Deathwing wanted the Skull of Gul'dan. Ner'zhul was reluctant at first as Gul'dan was his apprentice, and the power left from Gul'dan should be his by right. But you can't deny a being as powerful as Deathwing something that he wants. Deathwing left with the skull in hand, and as Deathwing left Ner'zhul's hideaway, Terangor and Ner'zhul started to form their plan to open these portals to other worlds. The Alliance had found out what it was the Orcs were doing back on Azeroth, and they figured they couldn't just let it happen. Sure, Azeroth would be safe for the time being, but they couldn't just let other worlds be ravaged by this Orcish horde. This is when the decision was made by Turalyon that they had to go to the other side, step through the Dark Portal, and take the fight to the Orcish homeworld. Several major Alliance characters went through the Dark Portal: Khadgar, Illyria Windrunner, Denethor Trollbane, Kurdran Wildhammer. All together, they charged the portal, which Grommash and the Orcish horde try to hold. But they get through, they claim a piece of the world of Draenor, build on a hold, and for months Khadgar was trying to figure out what it is Ner'zhul was trying to do. As they were wondering why they hadn't casted their spells yet to open new portals, one night it came to the mage. Once every 547 years there is a celestial event on Draenor which involves 3 constellations. The stars would line up perfectly, forming the scepter, the book, and the eye, the perfect moment to cast and empower his spell. This event was 55 days away from when he figured it out, and the celestial alignment would only last for a total of 3 days. Ner'zhul had spent many months preparing his spell, but in order to cast it, he had to be at a specific location. The Black Temple was the perfect place. It was originally known as Karabor, the home of the Draenei, and was a powerful place in itself on the world. Ner'zhul, Terangor, and Kilrog Deadeye all left Hellfire Citadel, leaving behind Kargath Bladefist and Dentarg, the Ogre, behind to keep the Alliance busy. Khadgar and the Alliance attacked the Citadel, Kilrog knowing that this was a fight that they simply could not win. He fled thinking he bought Ner'zhul enough time, but Dentarg wasn't as lucky as he was decapitated by Khadgar in a mage duel. With the fighting over, Khadgar and the Alliance find out Ner'zhul was no longer there. They find out Khadgar used... Oh my god, sorry, let me go through this again. With the fighting over, Khadgar and the Alliance find out Ner'zhul is no longer there. They find out, using Khadgar's magic, he tracks down the artifacts that Ner'zhul took with him, which is the Skull of Gul'dan and the Eye of Dalaran, but to his surprise they're in separate places. Knowing this, they have to split their forces and go after each of them in a smaller force. Khadgar, Illyria, and Turalyon go after the Skull of Gul'dan, and Denethor Trollbane and Kurdran follow Ner'zhul and the Eye of Dalaran. Kurdran pinned down Ner'zhul and his party with Wildhammer dwarves swooping down from the skies on their mighty griffins again and again. Terangor spoke to Ner'zhul, telling him he thought the mighty Ner'zhul would be able to handle such a pathetic attack. Ner'zhul spoke up. "You should not speak to me that way," Terangor fiend. With this, Ner'zhul rose in anger. His shamanistic magic had once made him one with the world, able to tap into the elements themselves, but the elements no longer heeded his call. They hadn't since he sworn allegiance to kill Jaden, as if they were disgusted by the demonic energies that now tainted all his race. In this time, he had learnt new skills. A wind erupted out of nowhere. A griffin that had moments before been diving smoothly for another pass, beak open in an angry shriek, claws extended, now cawed frantically as it was buffeted about, as if by an unseen hand. Its rider struggled to maintain his seat, but failed and fell horribly towards the ground. The unburdened griffin sought the skies. Ner'zhul gestured with both hands commandingly, and the wind snatched up dry, grey sand and proceeded to scour both dwarf and griffin with it. Seconds later, there was nothing but 2 piles of glistening flesh on the floor. Ner'zhul had newfound strength, and with his command, he no longer asked the elements for help. He instead commanded the elements to serve him. Terengor, impressed as to what he had seen, didn't let Ner'zhul have all the fun. With his dark magic, he shot down Kurdrum Wildhammer from the sky. They captured him, and in doing so, they forced the Wildhammers to retreat and allow the orcs to continue with their mission. On their journey, they realised that they needed a place to hide. Arkandun was the ideal place for this, but Kilrog Deadeye was terrified of this place. The Arkandun was a burial ground for the Draenei until Gul'dan and his Shadow Council attacked the place in search of artifacts. They did find an artifact for sure, but in doing so, released an elemental called Murmur. This elemental was born when the universe was created. Murmur's awakening devastated the holy site, scarring the land and leaving it dead of all life. And now the orcs were going to enter the area. They had little other choices to do so, as the Alliance were right behind them, so they gathered their courage and moved on ahead. The Alliance soon followed into Arkandun, and both sides gained new allies. The Horde gained some of those that were with the Shadow Council that wished to rejoin the Horde, and the Alliance came across a lonely Draenei going by the name of Nimmeron. I want to say Nimmeron. I'm really sorry if I did butcher the name. Nimmeron was pissed that the orcs called upon the ancients. Nimmeron was pissed at the orcs and called upon the ancient spirits that slumbered within Arkandun to fight once again. During the fighting, Daneth Trollbane and Nimmeron came across Kurdrum Wildhammer, and he was beaten up pretty good. But a mighty healing spell from Nimmeron made him as good as new. During all of this, Ner'zhul and Terengor Fiend created a portal to escape. Daneth Trollbane found out and they were creating a portal to escape. Daneth Trollbane found out and was insistent on stopping them, but between him and the portal was Kilrog Deadeye. A long, weary battle took place between Daneth and Kilrog, which resulted in the mighty orc being killed. Kilrog did what he had to, though, as it bought Ner'zhul and Terengor enough time to create the portal and escape through it. With Khadgar, Illyria and Turalyon beating back Deathwing and taking the skull of Gul'dan, all the Alliance needed was the Eye of Dalaran to close the dark portal. With the full might of the Alliance and on Draenor, they charged the Black Temple as Ner'zhul's spell was nearly ready. Months of gathering and energies working the spell had come down to how much time he was bought by his horde. The Death Knight Terengor stood onto the battlefield, and a fierce battle between Terengor and Turalyon took place. Terengor nearly defeated Turalyon until his opponent found his second wind, overcoming Terengor and defeating him. During this time, Ner'zhul was done. His spell-casted portals across the already corrupted homeworld of the orcs popped up everywhere on the planet of Draenor. The orcs with Ner'zhul witnessed the opening of the portals, and one orc spoke up. "This is our new home?" The orc Obris was the one to speak, as from what little they could see through the portal didn't look like the orc's salvation. It didn't look like much at all. Ner'zhul was having none of this, and told Obris to be silent. During this moment of distraction, the eye of Dalaran began to tremble and began to fly out of his hands straight into Khadgar's. Ner'zhul, outraged with the Alliance ruining his moment, raised his hands and in doing so made the tortured stone obey his commands, picking up the Alliance forces and throwing them to the ground. Ner'zhul, enjoying the pain he was causing them, yelled for the orcs to go through the portal, to their new world, and Obris was in shock at this command. Surely our war chief doesn't mean to leave the rest of our brothers and sisters behind, he thought to himself, and tried to reason and speak with Ner'zhul about this. Ner'zhul again wasn't going to hear it from Obris, and extended his hand, throwing out lightning towards the orc, knocking him down. This struck fear into the other orcs as they obeyed his command and started going through the portal. Khadgar saw Ner'zhul step through the portal and in doing so thought that they had lost their chance at closing the dark portal, as surely the Book of Medivh was still with Ner'zhul. Thankfully for them it wasn't. Obris held the book and gave it to Khadgar, as this orc mage had some honour compared to Ner'zhul. With the artifacts in hand, Khadgar and the Alliance made their way to the dark portal and began to close it on Draenor's side, as they couldn't do it from Azeroth's side. Otherwise the corruption and devastation from Draenor would spread to Azeroth, meaning they had to stay behind. As the portal was closing, Khadgar threw the book and the skull to a Wildhammer dwarf and told him to go through the portal and take these artifacts to the Kirin Tor. With the closing of the dark portal is where the Alliance story ends until the Burning Crusade. Ner'zhul's story does not. This is taken from Beyond the Dark Portal, as it is the best way to describe what had happened next to Ner'zhul after he stepped foot through this portal. Ner'zhul, the orc shaman, the Horde war chief, cried out at the sound of his name, his eyes flickering open. At once the strange swirling nothingness all around him assaulted his senses, and he squeezed his eyes shut, hoping to force away the welter of sensation that threatened to drive him mad. Then through the thrums and howls and crackling he heard it again. Ner'zhul. Blinking, he glanced around him a short ways away, or so it seemed. For an instant later he would have sworn it was miles distant. Ner'zhul saw a dark form. It was shaped like an orc, and a longer look confirmed it, revealing green skin and tusks and long braids. Definitely an orc, and one Ner'zhul recognised as one of his own Shadow Moon warriors. The warrior did not move, however. Ner'zhul thought he saw the other orc's chest rising and falling, but in this place he could not be sure of anything. The warrior did not move. Oh my god, sorry. And that other shapes littered the strange maelstrom of light and shadow. All those who had followed him through the rift appeared to be here with him. The question was, where was here? Why hadn't the rift led them to another world? For whatever this place might be, Ner'zhul was sure it was not a normal world. What had happened? Why was he awake and aware while the others were trapped in a deep sleep? A column of light rolled past, and for an instant Ner'zhul saw echoing glimmers around each of the other orcs and around himself. His eyes His eyes then clamped shut as they were overloaded from the sights assaulting them. But he knew what he had seen. They were indeed trapped. Something was binding them to this place. Ner'zhul. His name wafted across the strangeness. Yet again, But this time, Ner'zhul felt something tug upon his chest and his limbs. The other orcs receded rapidly, or perhaps he was the one moving while they remained locked in place. It was impossible to tell here. But within minutes, Ner'zhul was alone. The rest of his orcs only distant shadows, and then a larger, darker shadow fell across him, and he looked up into the face of Wrath itself. Before Ner'zhul hung a massive being arrayed in heavy armour of etched blood-red metal. The figure's face resembled that of a Draenei, intelligent-looking and clever, but with bright red skin and a demonic cast. The creature had short, curving horns rising from its high temples. Two strange protrusions like tentacles extending below his mouth and well past the short beard covering his chin. Several earrings gleamed, and the creature's eyes glowed a deep yellow, and Ner'zhul knew it was him at once. Great One, Ner'zhul grasped, doing his best to bow, though his limbs were still bound somehow. "Ah, Ner'zhul, my unfaithful little servant," replied Kil'jaeden, Demon Lord of the Burning Legion. "Do you think I had forgotten about you?" "No, Great One, of course not." In truth, Ner'zhul had hoped so, and after the first few years he began to think it true. Now his heart sank as the Demon Lord continued speaking. "Oh, I have been watching you closely all the time, Ner'zhul," Kil'jaeden assured him. "You cost me a great deal, you know." The Demon Lord laughed, a chilling, grating sound. "And now you shall pay for such a failure." Ner'zhul began, but his brain could barely formulate words. "You could not leave well enough alone," Kil'jaeden finished for him. "I knew that eventually you would try yet again to cast magics you were not ready to handle and did not understand. I waited, knowing that someday your own arrogance would bring you to me." He spread his gauntleted hands wide, and here we are. His eyes narrowed to mere slits. "You have dreamed of death. You thought to escape it. Now, my little puppet, death will be all you ever know." Brief glimpses seared Ner'zhul's brain. Agony as pieces of flesh were torn from his still-living body. The dead surrounding him, closing in on him, their blood on his hands, his own blood coating them, a morbid union of death, life, and excruciating torment. "No," Ner'zhul shouted, thrashing about, trying everything to free himself from his inevitable bonds, or invisible bonds, "My people still need me." Laughter shook the Demon Lord's powerful form, a horrible, eerie sound that made Ner'zhul's heart spasm. "I know full well they mean nothing to you, so do not worry," the Demon Lord whispered, stabbing the tip of his long finger into Ner'zhul's cheek. The motion burned, sending spikes of heat and pain through Ner'zhul's flesh. "There is no saving them. Do you not yet understand, little puppet? You cannot even save yourself." Then he twisted that finger, the rest of his splayed hand latching onto Ner'zhul's face, and the orc shaman let his head fall back, a horrible scream wrenching its way out past his trembling lips. He knew that this was the first of many. Ner'zhul was tortured over and over again throughout many, many years. Eventually, Kil'jaeden came up with another plan for Ner'zhul, which would involve trapping him into pieces of armour to do his bidding. And that is where the story of the Lich King and Arthas and Ner'zhul all come together, with this piece of armour and the Morn blade called Frostmourne. So all of these characters are tied into one another. Ner'zhul, Arthas, and the Lich King as a whole, they're all connected, but it doesn't make sense, just starting on the Lich King and Arthas when you don't know the origin of Ner'zhul and the armour that, ties it all together. So I would like to do the Lich King lore in the future. Again, still very new at the lore stuff. It's kind of tough reading off as sort of a script that I've done, so do apologise for anything that I've kind of messed up there. It's still, again, very new. I usually just go off of it, free flow. Sometimes it makes it a lot easier to speak for me, and reading is not my forte, to say the least. But I would like to cover the Lich King lore. I might do that after next week's podcast. There might be something that I'm looking at for next week's podcast. But I definitely want to continue the story with the Lich King, Arthas, etc. But again, do let me know what you think of the lore stuff. Is it your kind of cup of tea? Is it not? What do you think? Whatever you're listening to, whatever you're listening on, whatever platform, please rate it. Let me know what you think of it, etc. And do check out our recent overhaul Patreon. You can support the channel from just as little as £1 a month. It's very cheap. Definitely go check it out. It's been an overhaul on the Patreon, so would really like it if you do check it out and possibly consider supporting the channel even further. But apart from that, the social medias are on the website as always, www.pigandwhistletales.com. Thank you all very much for listening as always. I'll see you next week, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.